Where is my mute button? My dog just going nuts.
Yeah, I heard it. He's playing around with his toys.
It would not be a proper webinar without some squeaky toys in the background or dogs barking. Welcome everybody who's coming in right now. We're just allowing others who have been in the waiting room to filter in, and we'll start in a minute. Okay, well, let's get the show underway. Welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this CCS Plus side event. It's a great way to open day 2 of IETA's North America Climate Summit, the affiliate event of New York Climate Week. It's just great to have such a wonderful panel of experts and be able to showcase, I think for the first time, the brand new CCS Plus initiative. I'm Katie Sullivan, Managing Director at IETA, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's discussion. So Matthias, next slide, please. Again, the side event title, Unlocking Carbon Credit Potential for Emission Reductions and Removals. And maybe actually I'll take a moment here to just remark, and if we were together live, I would ask the audience with hands up whether they had seen the new UN synthesis report that was published last week. It's come up in nearly every session discussion that I've been a part of over the last couple of days. And in that report, you have a chart from the report that compares global emissions under scenarios in IPCC's 2019 1.5 degree special report with total global emissions according to the latest NDCs, nationally determined contributions. And it shows that global emissions are en route to being 16% higher in 2030 than they were in 2010. So levels aligning to a 2.7 degrees Celsius of warming. And this is even if all NDCs under Paris are fully achieved. So to be clear, that's very bad news because any chance of limiting average temperature increase below the 2 degree, let alone the 1.5 degree, will need to slash emissions by 25% below 2010 by 2030. So to be clear, these new projections take into account all commitments from Paris that had submitted NDCs by the end of July 2021. So we now have around 86 new or updated NDCs from 113 parties so far. This represents around 60% of parties to Paris and half of global GHG emissions. It's notable that 70 countries have now indicated carbon neutrality goals around 2050. And it's also notable that many updated NDCs reference use of CCS or geological storage. Because I'm IETA and we love markets and international cooperation, it's also worth noting that 80% of countries with updated NDCs plan to participate in international carbon markets and cooperation. And this compares to 66% that had indicated as much in their original NDCs. So moral of the story is that we have serious climate ambition, investment gaps. They need to be filled and on a hyper accelerated timescale. It's an all hands on deck moment. We need to deliver the right incentives and price signals to the right stakeholders, and we need to scale all solutions across reductions, removals, and avoidance. So across the net zero journey, and I very much would include corporates and their voluntary commitments, who are leaning into innovative market solutions. We need to take into account unique regional, socioeconomic, temporal considerations, but also unique land-based and geological storage considerations. So with that, today we are focusing on the tremendously important area of markets, crediting mechanisms, and methodologies to drive CCS, and specifically this brand new initiative, CCS Plus. I believe it was launched in 2021, June, so really only a couple of months ago. So it's with thanks to, well, Matthias and Perspectives, who act as the Secretariat of the new CCS Plus. We'll learn more about the initiative, its objectives, its work plan, promise to play an integral role in helping to scale CCUS activities and infrastructure globally. So next slide, please. So after Matthias provides an overview of the project, we'll ask Tony, Elise, and David, and I'll get into some mini bios later, but we have Tony from Oxy Low Carbon Ventures, we have Elise from Northern Lights, and we have David, who's Managing Director at Carbon Finance Labs. So after Matthias provides the overview of CCS Plus, we will have a panel of respondents share their experience on the CCS journey and why they're involved as founding partners and supporters of the CCS Plus project. And then we will open it up to your questions and comments. So I just want to make it clear, everybody, I assume, is very familiar with Zoom platforms by now, but we do want to make this as interactive as possible. So please do not be shy, okay? And no need to be patient either. Feel free to start sending questions in through the chat box down below or comments, and what we'll do is keep track of those, myself included, as they come through over the course of the next 50 minutes and a bit. So with that, I'll pass it over to Matthias to tell us more about the CCS Plus initiative.
Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. And hello, everyone. Great that you are out there. We realize it's very early, might be very early for some of you. So thank you for getting up early and to be with us here. And on behalf of all members of the CCS Plus initiative, it's a really great pleasure to have you here, and we welcome you very, very warmly. And as Katie has said, it's a really special day for the CCS Plus initiative, because this is the first time that we are going live with a dedicated event. And I'm also very happy to represent the CCS Plus initiative here as the lead of the Secretariat, and have alongside in this group a number of co-founders of the CCS Plus initiative. And I'm excited to share with you now what our objective is, what our approach is, and how our work plan looks like. And also, very importantly, for those of you that are interested in the topic, how you can get involved with us, because this is really a very open and very collaborative initiative. So why should you stay on with us here in the next couple of 50 minutes and for this event? Well, there are actually 4 W's that we are going to touch upon here. And one is why the CCS Plus initiative. Why are we doing this? Then who is involved? Who are the members? Who are their roles? And as I said, this is not closed. We are open to receive more institutions under our big tent, but you will get to know who's there and what their roles are. Then I want to share with you our work plan. It quite some detail, and it's quite ambitious. So watch out for that. And then we have a last slide on the benefits of joining the CCS Plus initiative, and then I'm going to close with an invitation to stay in touch, basically. So let's start with the context. And for those of you who might not be so familiar with what CCS actually is, I just like to give you a very quick rundown. CCS stands for carbon capture and storage, and it means that a pure CO2 stream can come from various locations, is captured, is compressed. It's a gas, so can be compressed, is transported to a site where it's stored for long-term away from the atmosphere. So that's the idea, and that is why it is a very important mitigation solution, as Katie already pointed out. And it's very important for reaching net zero by 2050, and the technical solutions that we have under CCS can deliver both emission reductions and carbon removals, depending on the technology and that depending on the use case of the technology. So what are our objectives under the CCS Plus initiative? As most of you know, carbon finance can be crucial and can be a very successful model for unlocking and scaling mitigation potential. And that's actually where we are at the moment still lacking. We have a finance gap for carbon capture and storage for a lot of technologies and a lot of projects. And the objective is that we're using the carbon market with a focus on the voluntary carbon market, but also beyond. You mentioned Article 6 here, and I will go a little bit deeper there also later. So we want to use this tool, this instrument of the carbon market in order to finance CCS plus projects. And at the moment, methodologies, those of you who are aware, carbon crediting always needs a methodology before you can propose a project. Those methodologies are absent, largely absent in the market at the moment. We have certain geographies, certain technologies where there are methodologies, but it's a really, a patchy landscape. You might know about the ACR, enhanced oil recovery methodology, for example. Things are happening in Canada and Australia, but on a global level, there's really no methodological solution, and that's what we want to build, and we want to build it in a high integrity way, high quality, and we want an integrated methodological framework across all suites of CCS activities, and that's why we're aiming to do this top down and not bottom up, because we really want it integrated and holistic. And just one word with regards to high integrity. As all of you know, yesterday we had the governance body announced by the Task Force for Scaling the Voluntary Carbon Market. And if you look at their work program with regards to credit level integrity, then you know that they have defined the core carbon principles, because buyers are very much concerned about quality of credits. And the core carbon principles are meant to bring transparency here. And the governance body is meant to check all standards for the core carbon principles, and is meant to check all methodologies for alignment with the core carbon principles. So that's, of course, something in addition to the voluntary carbon market standard, where we aim to build the methodologies we will need to take into account and need to be very, very forward looking. And as I said before, this is a collaborative approach. It's a multi-industry undertaking, and we are really inviting more to join. Who's there at the moment? You can see on this slide. We have several types of memberships. Let's start with the core partners. The core partners are those that bring funding to the initiative, and are those that are also on the steering committee. So they steer the initiative in a coordinated direction. And you see here Low Carbon Ventures, Carbon Finance Labs, Northern Lights, Total Energies, Equinor, BP, Mitsubishi, and IFPEN are at the moment the core partners, and they've provided funding so that the work can start. We will see later what has been started already. And they also bring their use cases, because that's the idea, that we are not sort of building, blue sky methodologies, but what we really want to build is we want to build tools that work on the ground. And that's why we have several partners working on several types of use cases together to build the methodological foundations. Then we have the partners, and the partners are not on the steering committee, but they are also providing finance to the initiative. And they bring in the use cases. They can bring several use cases as much as they want, and we will integrate them into the initiative. And we are actually talking to dozen partners that are about to join the initiative from a really diverse set of backgrounds. And then we have the technology partners. Those are the ones that really are working on, often as startups, a single technology, and are working on one use case exclusively and working on the methodology together with us. And the carbon consultants, Perspectives is a carbon consultant to the CCS Plus initiative, and so is South Pole. And our role is to be the Secretariat of the CCS Plus initiative, as well as we are the technical experts who are, as we say, you're holding the pen for writing the outputs of the CCS Plus initiative, so that we have a really highly skilled team that in a very coordinated fashion can process all these things in parallel that we're working on at the moment. And when we are done with the methodologies, then we are sending them to Vera, and we are coordinating with Vera, timelines, by when are we going to submit what, etc., etc. But Vera really acts here as part of the CCS Plus initiative, as you know it, as a completely independent body. So they provide to whatever we are submitting them, they will provide the same rigorous process and the same standards as they will do it for any other methodology that is submitted to them. And that's really important to highlight here. So there's no guarantee that what we are building will get approved by Vera. Of course not. Only if we do our work right as the carbon consultants and as the whole initiative, then we will get approval. And we also have an advisory group with us that we are very happy with. You can see that it's quite a diverse group, quite a lot of players. That was important for us. And we have already started working with them. We had our first advisory group meeting, and that went really well. Before I get to the work plan, I just want to explain to you, because I think it's important. I want to explain to you how do we go about building the methodology. At the moment, so far I was only talking about the methodology. Well, we actually started with a document that was called Guidance and Principles. And this Guidance and Principles document, the objective of it was to reflect what kind of pitfalls might there be from an environmental integrity point of view and from a public perception point of view when you start wanting to generate carbon credits for CCS+. For example, incomplete value chains, life cycle analysis, insufficient post-injection monitoring, etc., etc. So this is what we reflected in this internal Guidance and Principles document, and that document informed our methodology framework. And it informed how are we going to, in general terms, you work on the value chain that is in capturing, in transport, and in storing with different entities involved, different kinds of technologies. How do we want to approach this generally from a methodological point of view? So this methodology framework defines, for example, what is a project? What is a project when there is a situation where a project is across a value chain and needs a lot of actors to be involved in and play with each other. And how do we find applicability conditions? How do we want to set baselines in general? How do we deal with additionality? How do we set the boundaries in general? I was referring to life cycle assessment and analysis further. So that's what the methodology framework does. Now, if there is someone coming with a project, for example, and the project is just as an illustration, direct air capture, transport via pipelines, and storage in a saline aquifer, then the project proponent would to select the capture module for DAC, the transport module for pipeline, and the storage module for saline aquifer, combine it with the methodology framework, put this in a package together with the PDD, and then off the proponent goes to submit the project to Verra, for example. There, now my slides are not moving. Yeah, now it works. So we did a work plan for the CCS Plus initiative, and we tentatively earmarked the following capture modules to work on, the following transport modules to work on. You all see them on the left-hand side, and the following storage modules to work on. And as I said, they will then work in a plug-and-play, in a kind of plug-and-play fashion together with a methodology framework. And we are building those methodologies in packages. So we are coordinating with Verra. This is when we're going to submit the first package. When Verra is reviewing it, we are going to work on the second package, et cetera, because what we really need is speed, and we want the things to be approved as quickly as possible so that action can take place. And I also like to share with you that in addition to the modules, we are aiming to, for lack of a better word so far, develop complementary tool sets. Now, what do we mean by that? You can think of it as white papers or guidance on how what we are building on the project level, the methodology framework and the modules, actually has relevance and can meaningfully interact with the regional level, the national level, and the sub-national level. So if you think about MRV frameworks, for example, monitoring, reporting, verification frameworks, they are required at those levels, for example, for an Article 6 mechanism involving CCS. So there, this project level tools that we've built can be meaningfully used for an Article 6, and we want to show in our complementary tool sets how can this be practically done. Or for example, at the national level, we are dealing with subsidy schemes, tax rebates, et cetera, So again, how is here useful what we've done in terms of our methodological work for the national level? And you see on the right-hand side a number of complementary tool sets that we are wanting to build and that are part of our work plan. One on voluntary carbon markets, one on EU ETS, one on 45Q, and a couple more actually. So how does our timeline look like? I mentioned earlier, it's fairly ambitious. We started to work on what we call package 1A already a couple of months ago. We have the guidance and principles document I was mentioning before. We have the methodology framework in final draft stage, and we have 5 capture, 2 transport, and 2 storage modules now in final draft stage. And our plan is that they will go for public consultation under Vera in November this year, and we want to have them approved by April next year, so that they can then be used. Then we have following packages. I'm just going to where we work on more modules. I would just like to highlight the package 2, which includes then the first compliance tools that we're going to start towards the end of this year. Now this is the work plan for the package 1A that I mentioned before, and you see there that we are in final draft stage the DAC module, capture the post-combustion module, as we call it, capture from CO2-rich gases, capture from oil and gas production, capture from biogenic sources. That's actually a very important module, because only with this module you are able to differentiate between emission reductions and removals. Because if there's biomass involved, if CO2 comes from biomass, that's when you have a removal, for example. So if there's a waste to energy plant, then you have to use the 2.3 and the 2.5 in combination, and you can even differentiate in one project between emission reductions and removals. We have 2 transport modules, pipeline and ships, and we have the 2 storage modules, storage in aquifers and storage in depleted oil and gas fields for the moment. So this was the work plan. Let me just close with my final slide and just reiterate that we are really open for everyone who has an interest, everyone who is, finds himself in the area of the modules I was talking about. Please approach us. We would really like to work together with you. And I would particularly like to mention and get the message out that we would really like to have new buyers also represented in the CCS Plus initiative. So if you are one, please reach out to us if you find this interesting, what we are doing. And then you can really start, contributing to the work and the pilots and the financing. And of course, the ready-made technologies are the end product, but I would like to make the pitch here that as soon as you're involved in the initiative, of course, you can get the sneak preview. You observe the process of how things are building out, and you can prepare your internal teams, for how things are going to pan out in the future, and really get ahead of the curve. So with that, I like to close and just reiterate again, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We would really like to talk to you. Thank you.
Excellent overview. You kept it tight, but there's a lot crammed in there, Matthias. Thank you so much. I should have said from the outset that IETA and ICROA, our voluntary affiliate, are a part of the advisory group. So you might have seen our logos there, along with many, many others. I'm proud to be involved. And it really is an ambitious effort, especially when you start putting the timetables on for package 1 consultation, November around the corner, hopefully adoption by April 2022. But like I said at the very beginning, ambition is what is needed right now. So hopefully this ecosystem of already a great group of founding partners and technology providers and advisory group, hopefully that ecosystem expands over the coming weeks and months. So thank you. Don't obviously go anywhere, Matthias. But what we'll do now is have some of our other experts and respondents join us, tell us a little bit about themselves and what's keeping them awake, excited, worried on the net zero journey, really CCS journey. And we'll start actually, and then obviously what has inspired them about this initiative and why they've been involved and the promise that it holds. So we will start with Anthony Tony Cottone. And Tony's a strategy, development planning and execution. He leads that for Oxy Low Carbon Ventures. His team's responsible for the financing and funding of CCUS projects, including the use of 45Q tax credit in the US. He is identifying emerging technology opportunities and manages OLCV's venture investments. So Tony, provide a bit of overview of Oxy Low Carbon Ventures CCS priority activities and investments, if you don't mind, just so the audience all has a flavor for what has kept you extremely active, but also quite innovative leaders in this space. And what are the main drivers for you and the team to be involved in the CCS Plus initiative?
Great. Good morning, everyone. And Katie, thanks for the introduction and great presentation there. Really summed up a lot of what we're doing. So as Katie said, I lead strategy and finance for Oxy Low Carbon Ventures. Oxy Low Carbon Ventures was formed really in 2018 when the Future Act in the US was passed, which expanded and extended the 45Q tax credit. So this tax credit is generated through the capture and sequestration of anthropogenic CO2 in the US. We can talk more about that. But really, we put this team together because Oxy had this very unique capability, very unique asset in the Permian Basin in West Texas, which utilized 20 million tons of CO2 and sequestered that CO2 over the long term through its operations. And so what we've done is this is really the foundational asset that we've built a CCUS carbon management business around. And it really enabled us to make investments in the CCUS space. And so we thought about the value chain from capture to transport to the reservoir and all the way to the distribution. And I'll talk a little bit about distribution, how that relates to CCS Plus. But on the capture side, we were very interested in investing in technology stage companies to be able to scale them, use them in our operations. And so one of the key investments that we made is in carbon engineering, which is what we believe is the leading industrial scale direct air capture technology out there. And so, like I said, we're looking to not just invest in these technologies and have passive investments, but we're also looking to deploy them. And so with that, we also formed a development company called 1.5, which has plans to build a 1 million ton direct air capture facility in the Permian Basin. We invested in other areas of the capture value chain. Direct air capture was one of the first, but also net power is another one where it's a natural gas emissions-free generation of electricity that inherently has carbon capture built into it. And so you can sort of see the trend here. We're looking to deploy these technologies and invest into them. On the transport side, obviously Oxy has core capabilities around that as an oil and gas company and the largest handler of CO2 in the world. And so we haven't made too many investments in there quite yet. But really the other area that we focused a lot on is on the reservoir. So Oxy has the first 2 approved US EPA MRV, monitoring, reporting, and verification plans, which enables the generation of a 45Q tax credit. That's essentially the mass balance in accounting for CO2 going into a reservoir. So those in the US. I'm also very optimistic on the CCS protocol in California to generate LCFS credit. So this is the California Air Resources Board permanence certificate for reservoirs. So we've worked very hard hand in hand to be able to file and optimistically get that approved, to be able to generate LCFS credits through reservoirs as well. And finally, in doing all the CCS activity, we're like, how do you sort of distribute and account for the positive impact here? Not just in the US, but on a global basis. And so we've made investments in sort of the exchanges around CCS and also in methodology development. This is really what brought us to CCS Plus. We thought that there needs to be a high integrity, transparent accounting methodology for CCS in order to really scale CCS globally, which is what is needed to happen And so that's why we're proud sort of founding members of the CCS Plus initiative.
It's a fantastic overview. And I just think of how quickly things have evolved over the years with 45Q and the California LCFS CCS, market. And yeah, busy but exciting times. And you've certainly been in the trenches and been a leader with your team at Oxy Low Carbon Ventures, Tony. So thank you. And again, don't go anywhere though, I'm coming back to you. But right now I'll actually ask, Elise, let's go across the pond. So Elise Rock, business development lead at Northern Lights, joint venture in the world's first cross-border open source carbon transport and storage service company. Elise, you've been in this space for many years. You started when you were very young, I assume, and acquired tremendous technical and economic knowledge across a number of energy production facilities globally. And now you're really focused on innovative solutions to support carbon removals projects. And you also are with Northern Lights, co-founder of CCS Plus. So why don't you tell us a bit more just about Northern Lights and the activities that you've been involved with, so our audience has a bit more context, and then why you have become a very active member and supporter of the CCS Plus initiative. Elise?
Yes, thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone. So Northern Light is a company that is developing an open source CO2 transportation and storage infrastructure. So we have ships that will take delivery of liquid CO2 at the emitters jetty quay, and that will ship the CO2 up to Norway, where we will store it into the Norwegian continental shelf in a saline aquifer. So some are planning CO2 storage in Europe. We are actually doing it. We are building right now the CO2 receiving terminal nearby Bergen in Norway. And we are an open source, we have an open source infrastructure. What does it mean? It means that we are welcoming CO2 coming from industrial emitters, as well as offering a solution for permanent storage of CO2 coming from direct air capture or other potential removals. And because we are the first project of this kind in Europe, we have a central role to play to establish the CCS market. We are talking to a lot of potential customers and potential partners, and we have seen over the past months that there are numerous carbon dioxide removal initiatives maturing in Europe. It's bio-CCS, BECCS, it's also DACS, direct air capture, and it's also biofuels. And they are all relying on commercialization of carbon credit to sustain their business case. And yet we see that they are struggling to define what is it that they are selling and how it can potentially fit also with the European framework that is not yet there, but that we foresee coming in the coming decade. So that's why we have decided to team up with other leading organizations and create the CCS Plus. For us, CCS Plus initiative is really an instrument to make the business case bankable. The initiative focus on pragmatic and practical approach, and this is very important for Northern Lights and as well as for the potential customer of Northern Lights and partner, because we are now building and we are now in execution in the project. It's not paperwork that we are doing, it's really underway. So because the CCS Plus initiative is guided by technology, science, and also environmental integrity, and it's supported by high standard. And we have also the guidance of recognized experts, as IETA is. We are really keen on making this work. And because we are, as I mentioned, building the market right now, we need to have the instrument to be able to create the revenue stream that are missing for the project to develop. So that's why we are there working hard for CCS Plus to meet their deadline.
It's wonderful to have all your leadership and involvement in the CCS Plus initiative. I actually have a number of questions related to the discussion around removals in the EU right now, but we'll save that. I do want to encourage the audience, if also you joined us late, we want you to not be shy and ask questions or share comments in the chat box. And now though, I'll go to David Ungar, who is really a dear friend and champion of markets across IETA circles, has been for years. And he's now managing director at Carbon Finance Labs. Brings some 3 decades of experience from senior management roles across some of the world's largest energy companies. And you have developed projects, sold carbon, led social and environmental innovations really around the world. You also are an advisor supporting a number of organizations across the World Bank and UNFCCC, and certainly across our ecosystem and in our orbit. So, and also working very closely with Tony and Oxy Low Carbon Ventures and others. So David, with that as intro, brief intro, actually you do a better job about Carbon Finance Labs and all the things that you're up to these days, and the work on CCUS, and also why you and the team are actively involved as a supporter of CCS Plus initiative.
Well, if I look back our last few decades of experience with carbon world, one is very clear to me, that we are being judged often by perceptions and less by the facts. And I think we are at the crucial time that we need to gain upper hand on both. We need to secure the buy-in for the initiatives from the governments, the industry, and the stakeholders as the global community of concerned and well-informed citizenry. And turning, as you originally in your question to me, you said, are we turning? And well, we are turning, and we have to accelerate as we are turning, because time is our friend. And when I look at what signs are out there for broadening support, yesterday I would have had a different answer today, but let's focus what I put together. But if I look at the NDCs, what you refer to, the change of NDCs and coming out, they are very encouraging. But for me, one of the most important early signs was the IETA 2050 Net Zero Vision report, referring the need for removals. The attention what this subject receives from the World Economic Forum. And I also would like to highlight the crucial pathways of several global businesses with low carbon intensity making commitments to the utilization of removal units towards their net zero commitments. Think about Swiss Re, Microsoft, Shopify, and even some high value manufacturing companies and engineering companies are committed to that. Then just think about Mr. Musk encouragement and his $100 million reward, but Bill Gates, Bezos, these are all very, very encouraging. And at the same time, we see very important signs from the academia that avoidance and reductions can deliver the targets we need to achieve. Mr. Julio Friedman, I think, is a great advocate out of Colombia. And then when I look at the financial world, which it creates the foundation to manage this process, I see also very important signs. Think about the pioneering work of South Pole putting together one of their first carbon removal only purchasing facility. The first example to address the need of project rating by B0, because that's for this new asset class, it's very important to be rated properly. And I think about the carbon streaming's innovative approach on their investment strategy. So these are very, very good signs. But the role of removal, I believe, also should receive much more attention from Mr. Carney's task force. And we do welcome sign to see natural evolution of voluntary initiatives and standards into compliance frameworks as a must. And CCS Plus is giving the foundation for that. We need much more support on proper accounting. And that helps also, I think, these new commitments from the NDCs. And this would be one great way to leverage the capacity and a competency of the industry, leveraging this existing knowledge instead of creating something new. And here is where Vera's leadership can be very essential. But so much more needs to be done, I believe. And I would love to see consideration of using removals as eligible offset in a various ETS initiatives, highlighting EU ETS. And we have to recognize the pioneering stand of the LCFS marketplace in California and some similar intents from other states. But by the next decade, as transportation is going to be much less carbon intense, that is going to carry less importance. So we need to find new models, and would love to see removals as a great component for circular economy models. That's about that. And if I think about from the practical perspective, without a comprehensive methodology with a widely accepted global standard, the attributes would be stuck. Elise referred to that, and so has Tony, but this is very, very important. All the early ERPAs signed on removals, they were all stipulating that what kind of instruments they're gonna structure around. Now we have a chance to do that. And if you think about CCS Plus, is perhaps one of the largest, if not the largest, collaborative methodology undertaking of the last 2 decades. And that is very, very important. I don't think there were ever such an inclusive program. And that will offer an opportunity for a new class of assets. A rise of new industries in the north and just much in the south.
You hit on a lot of points there and food for thought, David, and that was great. And it's true, having been in the space, I mean, even before IETA, which was many moons ago, I was involved in a number of CCS activities that were being done in Canada and Alberta. And then, when I think of the collaboration globally around focused on like a discrete methodology, but a major development, it was around CCS and the CDM. And that was a number, many, many years undertaking, finally adopted. It was a major feat, but the price of CERs was rock bottom. So it was never actually used because the economics never made sense. But that was, that was many years ago. So I think that actually is accurate, at least from my vantage point, around a broad group coalition with industry and NGOs and academics, right, and technology providers coming together around this issue broadly, and then like methodologically, like specifically and support. So with that, we have kind of done the circle. I certainly have plenty of other questions, but there are some ones that are coming through. Before we get to some of the questions in the chat, again, a reminder, this is your opportunity. Send these questions through to any of our panelists, including Matthias, about the CCS Plus initiative. But Matthias, let's just go back to you for a second, and let's do some, maybe they're softball questions. I'll let you decide. But when do you estimate that the first carbon credits might be issued from CCS Plus partner projects?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Katie. I mean, I've been in this market for 2 decades now as well, and this is of course what every client wants to know when he starts thinking about starting a project. There are of course always some uncertainties on the way, and flexibility is usually good advice. But I would say that if we get the methodologies approved as we plan by April next year, then if everything goes well, 8 to 9 months, they're going to be the first projects. Let's say by the end of next year, we're going to could have the registrations. And let's then assume we're talking about a 1-year monitoring period. Then we would speak actually about January 2024 with the first credits being issued. As a rough orientation.
Understanding that we won't keep you to it, but that sounds like far away, but that's really not that far away.
It's for carbon markets. It sounds far away, but I think it's for carbon markets not far away. I would say it's quite standard, unfortunately, if you want. And I would also say that well, we would need the project also to be up and running then by January 2023. And that might, even be, and Elise, can say a few things about that, might maybe not even possible for some of the projects.
I see an animated hand. David?
Yeah, I think it's also important to recognize once we will have the methodology approved and we have an existing methodology, structuring ERPAs and contracts are going to be much easier.
Yeah.
And this is very important. And then when you look at the complexity of some of these projects, the construction time makes this January 24 a very comfortable time frame.
Right.
What we are facing. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, I completely agree. The Northern Light is coming online in 24. So we will be able to accommodate 1.5 million tons of CO2 per year, and then much more in the year after that. But it takes time to build such facilities, and it's true that for the emitters, because so CCS, it's a value chain, and you start from one point, which is the capture before going to the storage, and you need also to invest in the capture part, and they need to have the ERPA or purchase agreement secure before they take their investment decision, and then it can take 1-2 years to build the capture facilities. So it's a capital intensive business, so it takes time to build.
But that's really helpful context, Elise. It's come up more and more, not only in the context of the TSVCM, but we've mentioned TSVCM, the task force for scaling the voluntary carbon market, and the development of these core carbon principles that will occur. And so more and more of this discussion around differentiation, right? And so I guess this probably goes back to Matthias, but will, the CCS Plus is the outcome looking to be able to differentiate between mitigation outcomes from emission reductions and removals from one project?
From a methodology standpoint, we are going to make sure that we're able to differentiate between emission reductions and removals. Then the next important step is, of course, that Vera, and I understand that they are looking into this, and that they are, I'm not speaking on behalf of Vera, so I need to be a little bit cautious here, but that they have the ambition and very seriously looking into being able to issue carbon credits for emission reductions and removals separately. And so that's sort of the two conditions that have to work. We need to get it right in the methodologies, and then Vera as a standard can get it right also on their side, that they are issuing carbon credits with removals or emission reductions.
Yes, they are. Well, and now they are building a team. I think many of our organizations are building teams a lot right now, given the amount of possible demand and work ahead in this space. And it's noteworthy that David Antonioli, who is the head of Vera, also was appointed to the board of the TSVCM that was announced yesterday, right? So hopefully at least complementary and lockstep coordination.
Exactly.
So it's a great question that came in, and when Elise was making some comments about just the EU activities around removals, I know the initial survey, consultation survey around removals, that was due last week, I think. But there is a question here from Albert about the Commission taking an initiative, EU-wide certification scheme for negative emissions. Supposedly the certified technologies and credits will be coupled to the regulated carbon trading schemes, the EU ETS. We don't really know exactly how that'll play out, right? But how is the CCS Plus initiative in sync with this, if at all? You kind of touched on it, Matthias, certainly in your complementary toolbox there, but maybe you can talk a bit more about that, or at least from your vantage point, how the CCS Plus initiative could be in sync and lockstep support these Commission consultations and decisions, really, over the next few months and years.
Yeah, that's a good question, Albert. I saw it already in the chat, while David was speaking. Well, the EU Commission now released on 9th of September released the roadmap in where it's how it wants to go about certification of carbon dioxide removals, and they made it very clear that they're interested in ecosystems, so carbon farming. Broadly, that's an initiative that has been boiling for some time in the EU. And Albert, I also saw your second question. No, CCS Plus is not about soil carbon. It's about CCS, and then emission reductions and removals are part of CCS, but soil, when removing, is not a part of the CCS, just to make this very clear. So the EU Commission is thinking about carbon farming removals and carbon removals from industry. And there we really need to dig, into what the roadmap looks like. We still have time on the 7th of October. The deadline closes for sending feedback, and we are going to send feedback from the CCS Plus initiative. And then next year in 2020, they want to do the legal proposal for the certification of carbon removals. So I think then things will be, ultimately clear. And of course, we try to be in sync. And I would say there are two tracks that we have to follow. One is the carbon dioxide removal one and the certification, and the other one is the EU Emissions Trading Directive and all the regulation, that comes with it. And I just heard this morning that there is going to be an amendment to the directive, which says that no allowances need to be surrendered any longer for emissions that are captured and moved away from the atmosphere. And that's the starting point, right? That's exactly when we as a CCS Plus initiative and the project proponents can come in and do carbon crediting.
Yes, so it's very interesting what is happening right now with the EU. They released the Fit for 55 package in the 14th of July, and they emphasize the need to revise the EU ETS, but also for each member state to set up a target for negative emissions. So this is where you start. They know they need carbon dioxide removal, but they need also to align all the members to align on what is it they are going to do and to reach the next level of detail, I would say. And for that, they are very eager to look at what the industries are doing. So they had a program before that was financed by the whole EU ETS, and it failed. Basically, they didn't manage to get project out of the ground to reduce emissions. So they don't want to do the same mistake here, and they want to follow on what is practical and what is actually working. So Northern Lights is highly subsidized by the Norwegian government, and it has been recognized also to play a central role in helping EU reaching their climate objectives. So there is a dialogue between the Northern Lights and the EU authorities on how we can make this happen. The export of CO2 from one country to another, a cross-border network, is something that we are discussing as well, among others, but also carbon reduction versus emission reduction versus carbon removals. And now they are at a state that they need to understand. They want to understand, so they are listening. That's why they are doing this survey. And we see that now it starts to trigger a lot of questions, but they are also eager to see what we are going to do. So they told us it's very interesting, the CCS Plus initiative. Let's look at what you are doing, because we know that what will come out from the CCS Plus initiative, it's something feasible. It means that industrial in Europe and other part of the world, but now I'm focusing in Europe, obviously. If you use this, you are making it work. You are building your project, you find the revenues, and you develop your project. So this is something we need to follow. So in a way, we are opening the road for them.
Opening the door, and I think so. Let's in the U.S. to Tony and David, and actually David, even your global work in the Middle East and everywhere else. Is there appetite or even knowledge right now about the CCS Plus initiative, or does that? It's still nascent days, I understand, but I assume that there will be some leaning in while doing broader engagement communications, including with governments across the U.S., be it state level or federal level. And David, yeah, your U.S. or broader, insights.
I clearly see indications from the Gulf region that they are looking at this as an option. Now you can hear it from Aramco and some of the energy companies from the area to express interest. I also know that some of them expressed interest to join the CCS Plus initiatives as well. I think you can see a lot of interest coming out of Australia. So I think it's going to be a very global, it's going to have a global outlook, but there is certain limitations of topography and geology and a lot of other details. But yes, I think it is gaining attention everywhere.
Yeah, I think from a U.S. perspective, I think there is a growing appreciation from a buyer's perspective, in particular for removals. David hit on this a bit earlier. In ERPAs, it was sort of not disclosed exactly what product was actually being purchased, right? And so, I think buyers are getting more confident in their understanding as to what they're actually buying and the potential standard behind it as well. So I think it's certainly helping to catalyze the market and getting buyers more and more comfortable with moving forward with carbon removal purchases.
Great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, I just forgot to mention, I think there's a lot of good signs out of Northeast Asia, which is very important. And I want to salute every early companies who are entering ERPAs and trying to help this industry to grow up and to coming to its age. They are doing a very, very crucial work. So the beginning is difficult.
We're running out of time. Really only a couple of minutes left. I don't actually see any other comments coming in, at least through my chat box right now. That's okay. I have a plenty that we never even had a chance to get to. I would like, though, to bring it up because it has come up a number of times. And if it's come up to me, I know it's come up to Matthias a lot more. But given that EOR is already applied in the oil and gas industry, why are you not yet working on an EOR module for this?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we have discussed EOR, in and out since the start of this initiative. And as I mentioned before, we started the guidance and principles document, where we are reflecting internally the discourse, the societal discourse on this, and are looking at it from an environmental integrity point of view. And you mentioned, Katie, it's already going on. So there is, also the question of additionality to be solved there. For example, under Vera, we have no grid connected renewable energy projects anymore because they are clearly, in parentheses, non-additional. So it's something that we are conscious, let's say, of all the opportunities and also the questions around EOR. And so we've decided not to take a decision yet, and certainly not to start working on a module yet. So it's stay tuned on that topic, I should say.
Stay tuned. That's a fair answer. Thank you very much, Matthias. Well, that went by in a flash, but what a wonderful way to start off day 2 of our summit. Honestly, I think we're all fresh, and it's a really exciting initiative. Again, it's still nascent, but it's going to move hard and fast and hopefully have a really incredible impact over the coming years. So you see it on the site right now. There will be a recording made on IETA's site and maybe on the CCS Plus initiative site of this session, and probably the deck, a standalone deck as well. For more information, go to Matthias and Matthias, both Matthiases at Perspectives. Yeah, it would be wonderful to welcome more and more groups, companies, NGOs to the ecosystem for this initiative as we move forward. Again, special thanks to the Perspectives teams, but Tony, David, Elise, fantastic to also have you join us here today. And I will also make a plug that this is just the beginning of a very jammed day 2 for our summit, IETA Summit, and we do have a CCS DAC session as part of the program later today, and that is at 2 o'clock Eastern. And we'll have actually Perspectives and Michael Avery, right? 1.5 will also be on that session as well. So hopefully you can join us for that. And I don't know if I've said it to your group before, but I made it up many years ago. Now I use it a lot. You can't spell success without CCUS. There you go.
Remember it, Katie.
That's what I'm here for. But again, thank you all so much for today's session. You take care, and we can't wait to all be together live somewhere sometime soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.